We're driven by habits every day, and about half of our actions on a daily basis are actually habit. This is according to the latest research in psychological science. So, about half of our life is habit. That means if you learn how to get better at building good habits and breaking bad ones, you'll be equipped in terms of half of your life. Half of your life will be sorted out by virtue of developing this one skill of building good habits and breaking bad ones. Today, we're going to focus on how to break bad habits. Because if your habits are not working for you, if your habits aren't aligned with your goals, if your habits aren't this automatic generation machine that's pushing you toward your goals automatically without too much effort from you, then you're wasting a big opportunity here. Because habits could provide you with the underlying foundation to meet your goals. Habits could be that engine that drives you toward the kind of life that you want, and all automatically, getting views while you snooze. So that is the importance of building good habits and breaking bad ones. And as I said, today we're going to focus on how to break bad habits. But stick around until the end, because at the end, I'm going to give you a suggestion on how you can access a free resource that is basically a 10-week plan to break any bad habit. But I'm going to walk you through, in that resource, I'm going to walk you through the 5 questions that you need to ask yourself to be able to develop that 10-week plan in a personalized way. Because most of the information in the personal development industry about habits is extremely generic. Oftentimes you'll watch a video on how to break a habit, but it will speak to the idea of habit as though all habits are created equally. They're not. The way in which you need to approach breaking your specific bad habit is dependent on many things. It's dependent on your context, on your goals, on your personality. It's dependent on the environment in which the habit occurs. It's dependent on the frequency and the duration. It's dependent on so many things. So if you want to take breaking a habit seriously, you have to do it in a personalized way. It's personalized treatment that's actually effective. I know this as a clinical psychologist. That's why I listen to people for hours before even getting to treatment. That's why psychotherapy sessions are so long, because we take the time to first understand, to first diagnose properly before we treat. A proper diagnosis leads to good treatment. And so stick around till the end, because I'm going to show you how to access that free training resource for you to get very practical and very personalized with breaking a bad habit. So let's dive into it. What are habits? Well, if you want to understand what habits are, don't look to personal development gurus. Look to the experts. One such expert that you can trust is a psychological professor who's dedicated a lot of their life to studying habits, and that's Professor Wendy Wood at the University of Southern California. She's a pretty reliable resource. She's someone I look to when I'm treating clients in my practice, so you should probably look to her as well. And how she describes what habits are is, she says that habits are basically mental shortcuts. They are these shortcuts that we develop so that we can make our life a bit more streamlined and efficient. So, for example, if you drink coffee in the mornings, let's say you drink coffee in the mornings, you might start off with having the intent to drink some coffee. So you've bought some coffee and you wake up and you have some intent to drink coffee, and then you sort of find a place to keep the coffee, and then you make some coffee, you find where the kettle is, you boil it, and then you make the coffee, you drink it, and then you're rewarded for drinking that coffee. So it feels good in some way. It makes you more alert. It makes you feel less groggy. And so there's an environment that triggers you drinking the coffee. There's the behavior of drinking the coffee, and then there's the reward that comes with drinking the coffee. So those are 3 parts. There's something that happens before the behavior, there's the behavior, and then there's something that happens after the behavior. So what happens before the behavior is called the cue. It's basically the trigger that triggers you drinking coffee. In the coffee drinking example, the cue could be waking up and feeling groggy. Or the cue could be going to the kitchen and seeing the coffee on the table. Or the cue could be smelling the coffee. Or the cue could be seeing someone else drinking coffee. Or the cue could be watching a movie where someone's drinking coffee. Whatever it is, the cue is what happens right before the habit is activated. That's your trigger. Then, after the cue, you have the behavior. In this case, it's actually making and drinking the coffee. And then you get the reward. The reward is what happens right after the coffee. It's that feeling of, nice taste. That could be a reward. It's the feeling of, I'm starting to be a bit more alert and energized. That's a reward. So the coffee rewards you. And so that's what happens right after the coffee. Now, all three of these put together is what's called the habit loop. This is what psychological scientists call it. The habit loop is made of the cue, the behavior, and the reward. And that's what keeps the habit intact. All three of those components are important for a habit to occur. And that's basically the mental shortcut. It's this loop that you keep going through. Cue, behavior, reward. Cue, behavior, reward. So on Monday, cue, behavior, reward. Tuesday morning, cue, behavior, reward. Wednesday, cue, behavior, reward. And you keep going like that on a day-to-day basis. And eventually, after about 10 weeks, it becomes habit. It just becomes what you do automatically. So after 2 weeks, we can say that this thing has become a habit because it's running automatically. You're no longer conscious that you want to make coffee, and you're no longer conscious of the fact that you're going to get some reward for it. It's just something you do. So that's what happens when a habit is created. You've created a mental shortcut where you no longer have to consciously think about what you're doing. Now you're not consciously deciding to make coffee, and you're not consciously feeling the reward. You're just engaging in the behavior automatically. That's what a habit is. And that's what Professor Wendy Wood means when she says that it is a mental shortcut. But now, this is where the trouble comes in. And this is why bad habits are so difficult to break. Because once it becomes a mental shortcut, it's been shifted from the conscious mind to the unconscious mind. In terms of brain systems, it's being shifted from your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your mind you use for conscious decision making, and it's being moved to some more primordial parts of the brain that are responsible for your unconscious processing. And that makes it difficult to change, because the part of your brain that's running the system is the unconscious machinery. It's not necessarily the part of the brain that you're in control of, which is the prefrontal cortex, the more conscious decision making. This is why we can often feel like, I know I really should stop drinking or scrolling through social media or doing whatever it is, but I just can't help it. I just keep doing it, despite the fact that I really know consciously I should stop doing this, and I know the negative consequences and I know the positive consequences if I stop doing it. Despite the fact that I know all of this stuff in here in the prefrontal cortex, the unconscious machinery keeps ticking. And so that's why, to illustrate this example, I could ask you, if you type on a keyboard a lot, what are the 5 letters on the second row of your keyboard? Without looking at it, what are the first 5 letters? Most people don't know the answer to that question without looking at their keyboard and say, I don't even know it actually. I'm looking now and I'm seeing A, S, D, F, G. Most people can't answer that question, yet they're typing on a daily basis on that same keyboard. But see, their typing is managed by the part of their brain that's in control of habit formation. It's the unconscious machinery that they're no longer in control of. So you're not consciously thinking, I need to hit an A, let me touch the A. I need to consciously hit an S, let me hit the S. That was when it wasn't a habit to type. Now that typing is a habit, you don't think about it. So you see, you weren't able to name the first 5 letters on the second row of your keyboard because that required your prefrontal cortex. But your prefrontal cortex is not typing. It's the unconscious machinery in the background. Another example of this is if I ask you to describe or to speak out loud about how you walk. So imagine you were instructing someone to walk. Try to imagine what you would say to them in terms of what they need to do to be able to walk. It's really difficult to think about that. Because if someone forgot how to walk and you needed to verbally explain to them, you'd really struggle. You'd probably say, okay, lift the foot and point your toe arch outward, and then sort of pivot the foot forward and keep the other foot still, and then put the heel down first, or put the ball of the foot. I actually don't know which should be first. Maybe, and then as you're putting it down, don't tilt it, keep it horizontal with the floor as the foot drops down, and then try to distribute your weight evenly by shifting your center of mass forward. Do you see how much description it takes to do something that you actually just do? You just walk. You don't think about it. You're not consciously deciding how to move your feet and how to move through space when you're walking. Because again, it's the unconscious machinery that's in action in those moments. It's not your conscious decision-making self. That is why you struggle to break your habits, because you've been trying to do it by changing the conscious machinery, when what needs to change is the unconscious machinery. Okay, so to change the unconscious machinery, let's walk through two examples that are quite common. One is snacking excessively while watching TV, and the other is checking social media the first thing in the morning. So let's talk about how these become habits based on the habit loop that I was describing earlier. If you're snacking excessively while watching TV, it's because you've been going through this cue, behavior, reward loop. In other words, the habit loop. You've been cycling through that for enough days for it to have become automatic, where now once you watch TV, you're eating automatically without thinking about it. But initially, there was a trigger to snack. So when you were watching TV, someone else might have been snacking next to you that triggered you to eat something. Or you might have felt a bit of hunger, and so you went to get something to eat. Or you might have seen some snacks on the coffee table, and you picked that up and ate. So that was the cue. And then the behavior was eating while watching TV, and then you felt rewarded because you were watching TV and that felt good, and then the food tasted good as well, so you were being rewarded. And now if you've done that enough times, you've repeated that cycle, cue, behavior, reward, you now do it automatically, to the point where you're not deciding, I should eat something while watching TV. It just sort of happens. You just go to the cupboard, you grab something, you sit down and you eat, and then you don't even think about it. You don't even taste the food that much, to be honest. And you don't even feel that rewarded afterwards, because it's just part of the habit loop. Now, if you're trying to overcome that habit, if you're trying to change the unconscious machinery, you need to try to think about how you can change any three of the habit loop's components. So you can change the cue, you can change the behavior, or you can change the reward. Let's start with the cue. If you want to stop being triggered into eating snacks, then you could stop watching that much TV. So if you actually don't value watching TV that much, just stop watching as much TV, because then the snacking won't occur as much. If you, for example, go outside and take a walk with a friend, you're less likely to be triggered into snacking while walking with a friend, as opposed to the original cue, which is watching TV, which triggered you to snack. Now, that's how you can change the cue or the trigger. The second way is to change the behavior. So instead of snacking on unhealthy snacks, you could change the behavior to snacking on things that are good for you, that are healthy. That is how you change the behavior in the habit loop. Then you still have the same cue, which is watching TV. You still have the same reward, which is having watched a good show and laughed and been entertained. But what you've changed is the behavior. It's the second component of the habit loop. You're no longer snacking on unhealthy things or just grabbing whatever in the cupboard. You're actually consciously buying healthy snacks that you're going to eat that night when you start to watch TV. So that's how you change the behavior in the habit loop. And then the third way is changing the reward. So you keep the trigger and the behavior the same, but you change the reward. In this case, you could, for example, ask your partner to watch you eating whenever you chew. That makes the behavior of eating less rewarding because it's a bit uncomfortable. Or you could say to yourself, I'm allowed to snack when I watch TV, but if I'm snacking, I have to look down at the snacks that I'm eating, and I have to miss parts of the show. That also makes the whole habit loop less rewarding, because you're not engaging with the show as much, and so you might start to feel a bit of a longing for the show. So that is an example of how you can change the reward, which is the third part of the habit loop. So again, you can change the cue, you can change the behavior, or you can change the reward. You do this long enough and you keep that change consistent for a while, and the habit will start to subside. You can do the same thing in the other example. If you think about checking social media first thing in the morning, if you were to change the cue, which is the trigger for using your phone, you could decide to charge your phone in another room, so that when you first wake up, your phone isn't right there by your bedside table. So you see, you've changed the trigger, so you're less likely to engage in the behavior of checking your phone. The other thing that you can do is you can put something else in front of your phone. When you go to bed, you can put your journal on your phone, so that when you wake up, you grab your journal first. So the trigger isn't there. You're not seeing your phone first thing in the morning, you're seeing your journal. So you're more likely to trigger that behavior rather than using your phone. Now that's how you can change the cue. If you want to change the behavior, you can replace checking your phone by messaging a loved one instead. Because messaging a loved one could also be triggered by seeing your phone, and it could give you the same reward. It could give you some sense of social connection. So messaging a loved one first thing in the morning or expressing some gratitude towards someone you care about could be a useful way to replace that behavior. And then you can destroy the habit by replacing the third component, which is the reward. So think about how you can make using social media first thing in the morning less rewarding. For example, if you use social media, you could say that you have to post the amount of time you spent on social media in the morning to an accountability partner. Or you could download an app that locks your social media and where you have to solve a puzzle before you're allowed to enter the social media app. There are apps like this that exist that lock other apps and make you solve some sort of puzzle or something like that before you're allowed to use social media. So again, it becomes less rewarding to think about engaging with social media when you know you have to post the amount of time you've spent to an accountability partner, or perhaps when you have to first solve a puzzle before you're allowed to use the app. That is a way to change the reward. So you can see by these two examples that I've illustrated, in order for you to break bad habits, you have to understand the habit loop. You have to understand that you've been cycling between cue, behavior, reward, and then you have to know how to change those pieces, how to change the cue, how to change the behavior, and how to change the reward. Now, if you'd like a practical way to walk through a specific habit that you have, a specific habit that you want to break, click in the video description below. You'll find a link there. I'm going to put a link in there, and the link is basically going to direct you to a free training video. Now, I've constructed that free training video in a way where I personally walk you through 5 steps, and those 5 steps are going to help you think about how to create a 10-week plan to finally break this bad habit that you're stuck in. This was sort of a general video for a general understanding about how to break bad habits, but if you want to get very specific, personalized, and create an evidence-based plan that's most likely to work for you with a specific bad habit, then click on the video link below in the description and I'll see you there.